Welcome all. Armenian lawyers around the world have headed to the different arenas of international law to hold Azerbaijan to task for the war crimes they committed during the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war. I'm joined now by Dr. Gurgen Petrossian, a researcher at the Friedrich Alexander University in Nuremberg, to discuss this and more. So Dr. Petrossian, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Emilio, for your invitation.
In terms of evidence and data, we've been hearing in Yerevan that although there are many legal Armenian teams around the world working to gather evidence, there isn't really a single entity where they can put all of this information together. One example would be the Center for Truth and Justice in the United States, which is gathering evidence and data regarding Azerbaijan's war crimes. Are you aware of this issue? What do you think about this? And do you think that there are any solutions that we can work towards?
Yes, I think this is one of the most important questions, which is in our to-do list, not only for the legal teams, but also in Armenia. There are lots of initiatives to collect the evidence from the war period of time, and just let me recall two already teams working on that. One is the azeriwarcrimes.org website, which collected evidence from the social media platforms, and of course the Truth and Justice Initiative, who are collecting the testimonies of the victims. I think, and of course we have to keep in mind that there are also initiatives in Armenia working on collection of evidence. Just recently, 2 weeks ago, I think, or 1 week even ago, there was a presentation of the analysis of evidence collected during the war period by different NGOs, Armenian-based NGOs. You see, already there are already different initiatives also abroad in the US, and also in Germany. We collected for our databases also the evidence, but these are very separated and individual initiatives. I think this everything should be gathered to one particular place, should be collected by the Armenian Republic of Armenia to make a global database of everything. What is also important to note that we have a very good and huge knowledge of IT technologies, and Armenia is one of those digital development initiators. So we have lots of IT specialists and experts who may use their knowledge to search through open source investigation, to collect evidence and to keep it in Armenian databases. I think this and another important point is the Ministry of Defense. They have a huge amount of evidence which might be used for the different legal processes outside of Armenia. So I don't know if these kind of processes are already practiced in Armenia. Behind the scenes, of course, there is no need to acknowledge or to publish about those kind of initiatives by the government. However, I think this should be done at least as soon as possible, because otherwise the evidence will be lost.
And as a legal expert, do you think that it would be a good idea then for the Armenian state to create a single entity, a single database where researchers and lawyers around the world can easily access information?
I wouldn't say really easily to access to the information. There should be, of course, some obstacles to get the information from that archive. Because you can imagine that the information which we collected will be pretty sensitive and might be used only for real processes and not just to make a fake process. Yes, I do believe that this is one of the important tasks of our government, to have a single database, an archive of everything. You can imagine how many processes and innovative legal processes might be initiated outside of Armenia. We have already used the ICG platform. We may use also the national legislation. I have already discussed some in my other interviews that why the ICC may not be initiated or the International Criminal Court may not be initiated, but we can use the national legislation on prosecution of international crimes by using that evidence which might be collected.
And also, you and your team have applied to the German Prosecutor General. Can you tell us a bit about this? What exactly was the application, and what has been the latest update regarding this?
Yeah, it's in 2020, during the war, we were actually looking for different ways how to start a legal process in regard to the armed conflict. So we had bilateral discussions with our colleagues in Russia, in France, in US, to understand what kind of legal processes are also taking place by their initiatives, by the legal teams. And we also, of course, these national legislations, you have to know what kind of availabilities or what kind of possible ways, legal ways are possible in particular state. And considering or bearing in mind that in Germany there is a huge tendency to use the German judiciary to prosecute international crimes, and we see that the willingness of the German prosecutor in different matters, we started to think of bringing the case also to the German prosecutor. So we made our first criminal complaint in late October 2020. And this year, again in October, we updated our criminal complaint with all evidence which we could collect during this 1 year, including the testimonies of the victims, including our own investigations in the social media platform, in order to find out who might be held responsible and who is the person or perpetrator who committed the war crime.
And in these international law arenas, what are some of the issues Armenian legal experts and lawyers are facing, in your opinion?
The problems which we're facing is unfortunately connected to the political reasons. Lot of legal or lawyers or those academians who are very well known in the international law, they are not that much familiar with the conflict. And of course, if they are not familiar with the conflict, it is really difficult to get their interest into the conflict. And sometimes there is just an ignorance. They don't really want to get involved in the conflict. Sometimes we bear this, we face this kind of problems, and not only with the lawyers or international academians, but also with the politicals. We speak about, we raise the problems, we raise the issue with the prisoners of war. They say, okay, yes, it is very sad that you have this kind of situation, but what do you expect from us? What we can do with all that problems? This is not in our capacity to solve the situation. So this is the first problem is the ignorance. In that perspective, but I think because of our non-activity, this ignorance may still be present. And I think the Republic of Armenia, who took now the initiative to bring a case before the ICJ, this is some kind of already legal activism that we want justice. But we don't have to forget that there are also other mechanisms, also as said, a national mechanism to use that path to highlight the problem that we have. We have still the problem in Artsakh. We have still lots of other legal issues around Artsakh, and we have to raise those issues on the legal platform. Just let me remind you that only two weeks ago. Just let me remind that we initiated the criminal complaint in Germany. The same process was initiated also in Sweden and Argentina. And Argentina, our colleagues, they did huge work in filing the case. And only 2 weeks ago, there was another investigation was opened in regard to the Rohingya community on basis of the universal jurisdiction, which makes again a hope that also our case might be open on the basis of the universal jurisdiction. So coming to your question, what kind of problems we face. I think that the Republic of Armenia should use all those mechanisms directly, indirectly, to raise the problem around Artsakh. We can. There are, of course, I don't want to disclose also, of course, the strategy which might be used. But let me bring also example from. Again from the Rohingya community, or from the victim from the other victim groups or victims communities such as the Uyghurs group, or they are trying to bring or raise issues through corporations, that the corporations may not use, for example, the cotton which is coming from the Western China. So they are raising the issues on different platforms, and also Rohingyas, they brought the cases before the ICG through Gambia. They brought they pleaded for bringing a case at the ICC, which started the investigation through Myanmar, through Bangladesh, to look into the crimes happening in Myanmar. And then we have also our very good friends, the Yazidi community, which are also working for the justice in using the national platforms to bring the perpetrators to the justice. For example, two months ago, there was a genocide judgment against the perpetrator who committed genocide against Yazidi community. So these are, and also another example with the Yemen victim community. They brought a case against a military air base of Germany, Ramstein, because of using these military bases to attack, to make the U.S. drone attacks in Yemen during the civil war. So there are different legal paths to raise the problems of the conflict, and I think we have to use that in order to raise the issue.
And finally, you mentioned the case at the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Though a lot of the Armenian demands were met, the court did not call for the immediate release of all Armenian POWs. I'm wondering what you thought about that and the case in general. And finally, some people bring up the talking point that it is very unlikely that Azerbaijan will abide by any of these orders by international law bodies. So why is this important? Because of the prisoners of war, we have to keep in mind that this is the state responsibility, and the claim which is brought to the ICG is bound to one particular convention against the racial discrimination, and everything which is discussed now before the court is around that convention. Judgment, or the judges, they cannot go beyond the convention. And of course, we don't have to lose our hope that the judgment is not or the decision or order is not satisfying our claims. Or no, this is a very long process. This is a legal path which we have to go. We don't have to expect a very quick decisions and in order to satisfy ourselves. No, this is a very long run. The whole process will last 6-7 years, and this legal initiative which is brought is very important to make in the international society that we want the justice, and we use the international mechanism, we use international legal paths to raise the conflict, to raise the problem which we have with the Azerbaijani Republic, Azerbaijani government, and this how we want to solve the conflict, not with fighting each other, to making a war with each other. No, we want to solve the problems by using the legal mechanism or other platforms for negotiation. Of course, at some points the law might not be for our side, or might not be that much to satisfy us, but we have to use those mechanisms to solve the issue, to solve the problem. And in regard to the prisoners of war, I mentioned also last time, I don't really think that this situation is really bound to the legal mechanism. Of course, the international humanitarian law has some regulations
has a very strict regulation about the repatriation of the prisoners of war, but unfortunately now the politics also plays an important role for the repatriation of the prisoners of war. Just look at the examples of Yugoslavian conflict. There were the prisoners of war, or repatriation of the prisoners of war also lasted pretty long. Or from the India and Pakistan conflict, this is a real issue which is really bound to the political willingness to do that. So they have to repatriate it, but when exactly they have to be repatriated, this is also a big question.
Well, Dr. Petrossian, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Emilio.
And thank you for joining us on CivilNet.